Altec is a leading provider of products and services to the electric utility, telecommunications, tree care, lights, and signs and contractor markets. Their promise to their customers since 1929 has been based on the values that place the customer first and view people as our greatest strength. Its chairman and CEO, grandson of the founder, continues to grow the company utilizing the same basic principles, and over the years, those values have helped them earn the trust and confidence of their customers worldwide. Far more frequently in 21st century America, the public image that a corporation promotes, like ALTECs, customer first and people are our greatest strength, doesn't match reality. And Lance Hansen, an Altec customer, knows that, unfortunately, all too well. On July 30th, 2012, 30-year-old Lance Hansen, an experienced AP45 truck boom tip operator, was working as the foreman on a job in Woodland, California. Because the Altec 45 truck boom's tip welds were improperly welded when originally manufactured, 4 welds rather than the recommended 12 to 20 welds, Lance's bucket collapsed and crashed, resulting in catastrophic injuries to him. In this insider-exclusive Investigative Network TV special, our news team travels to Redding, California to visit with Russ Reiner, partner at Reiner, Slaughter, McCartney, and Frankel Law Offices in Altec's dangerous AP45 truck boom tips, to show how Russ and his law firm were able to prove that Altec knew and later admitted that the boom tips in its AP45 trucks were defectively designed and manufactured and needed to be replaced immediately because serious injury could occur when a boom tip failed. Here's a brief summary of the how and the why of the failure mechanism of the AP45 boom tip.
The following is a brief description of the mechanism of failure of the Altec boom tip in the subject accident. As predicted in Altec's April 9, 2001 recall, the design of the interior geometry of the boom tip, combined with an inadequate weld technique, led to an unacceptable lack of weld penetration in a critical support structure. As can be seen in this end-view diagram, 4 fillet welds were intended to bond the 1/4-inch steel plates that were attached to the basket to the cylinder, which was part of the support structure of the boom tip, as can be seen in these post-accident photographs. The result is the fracture mechanism, caused by a lack of weld penetration, was progressive and developed over time. As seen here in this profile view diagram, the fractures in the subject boom tip arm occurred directly adjacent to the weld failures. It is also significant that the areas impacted were internal to the boom arm and could not have been observed by an external inspection by the user. This defective and unreasonably dangerous condition could only have been discovered if Altec had performed the inspection and recall called for by its April 9, 2001 notice. These failures produced just the sort of catastrophic injuries that were predicted by Altec's recall.
Altec AP45 boom tip failure and the resulting catastrophic injuries to Lance Hansen.
This presentation is intended to briefly summarize the liability of the Altec defendants. On April 9, 2001, Altec released a customer service notice that warned that death or serious injury can occur from failure of the boom tip. The notice was based on field reports that cracks in the boom tip were occurring in the field. The notice requires that the units be inspected immediately for cracks, and even if none are found, a weld repair must be performed at the next regularly scheduled maintenance interval. The notice included diagrams of inspection areas to be considered, as well as a procedure for a fix to re-weld areas of the boom tip. Altec estimated the inspection would take no more than 1/2 hour. Additionally, also on April the 9th, a second customer service notice was released. This notice directed maintenance personnel to cut an access hole in the intermediate boom to inspect the upper boom extension cylinder trunnion pins. These notices applied to all AP45 cable placers. Only 3 months after these recalls, Shasta General Engineering brought in their own AP45 for service. This AP45, which had been in service since June of 1998, was clearly subject to the recalls. Despite spending a claimed 24.5 hours servicing the vehicle, Altec failed to perform the required recalls, neither inspecting for the defects nor performing the required repairs. Shockingly, Altec's service invoice on item 5 claims that they checked for open CSNs as part of their service. A search, if performed, would certainly have revealed the 2 open recalls active on this specific vehicle. But this search was never conducted, the inspections were never conducted, and the repair was not made. A repair
the most unique
necessary
aspect
to avoid
of this
a
case
death or
has to
serious
do with
injury.
the duty of a manufacturer who knows of a potentially deadly defect in its product to cure the product and protect its customers. We all have become accustomed to getting recall notices in the mail or reading them online, but those are usually for a product sold to tens of thousands of people or more, and most commonly with a less dangerous defect. But in this case, the manufacturer made only about 700 of these vehicles and sold them for $75,000 or more to approximately 140 owners. Moreover, the defect, by Altec's admission, could cause serious injury or death. In those cases, manufacturers should do more than send a letter advising the owner to bring in his vehicle to replace a defective part that could kill somebody. Amazingly, the manufacturer knows to this day that there are more than 100 trucks that have yet to replace their defective boom tips. Although Altec has the information on the owners of these trucks, it has done nothing to fix the dangerous defect since mailing a single letter. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Redding, California. It's my great pleasure to introduce Russ Reiner to the show. Welcome to the show, Russ.
Thank you very much.
We're here today talking about a really tragic event that happened to your client, Lance Hansen. Tell our audience about who Lance is.
Lance is one of the most wonderful people that I've ever met, and I've been very proud to represent him. When this happened, Lance was 30 years old, and he was in what was called a AP45 made by Altec. And what it is it's one of these things you see. It's called a cherry picker or a bucket, and it can go 45 feet up in the air.
Right, utility companies use them, and anybody who has to reach up high with a worker.
Right. And that's what this thing was for, is to do wires and things like that. On the day that this happened, his father was driving this AP45. He was in the truck. And his son, Lance, was in the bucket. And he had on a harness that went up to his waist. And then attached to the back of this thing is what's called a monkey tail. Because when this thing goes up in the air, if for whatever reason, if you would fall out of the bucket, then this monkey tail could catch you, because you would only drop 5 feet. So anyway, this machine is designed to move while you're in the bucket. And so Lance was about 12 feet off of the ground. And all of a sudden, and without warning, this bucket broke, turned upside down, and the whole boom fell toward the pavement. And the bucket stopped about 2 feet before it hit the pavement. Lance fell out, and he broke his neck, and it also severed in the middle of his spine, and he's a paraplegic.
Right. He was only 30 years old.
30 years old at the time. And his father, who was driving the truck, witnessed this happen to his son.
Now, in these kind of cases, a lot of times people think, well, the equipment just failed and, that's just too bad. How do people go from that kind of initial response to end up in your law office?
In this particular case, Altec in this AP45.
Altec's a manufacturer.
Altec's a manufacturer. They're based in Alabama.
Yeah.
They sell these machines all over the world to big contractors, to like PG&E, to like Bell South. They sell thousands. This particular one, they manufactured approximately 700 of these AP45s. Anyway, they sold them, started selling them in 1998. In 2001, they were having failures.
The boom was failing.
The boom was failing. And the reason that the boom tip actually was failing is that it was supposed to have 20 welds, but it only had, in some of these, 4. Yeah. And so Altec sent out a notice in 2001 to its customers, and at the time there were only 58 that owned these, and that's important. Altec in 2001 knew they had a problem, and so they sent out a notice to the 58 owners of over 700 of these. If you don't get it fixed, it could lead to serious injury or death.
Right.
Okay. So in our particular case, they took it in to the dealership, the authorized dealer. But the problem that Altec did was that they sent out this notice and they said, bring it in. But if they didn't see cracks in this boom tip, they didn't fix it.
Yeah.
And so,
in other words, what they should have done is taken it apart.
It would have cost at the time like $50 to replace this tip.
Just reinforced it anyway.
Yes, and put in a new one. Yeah. But instead, they looked and they didn't see cracks. Our experts later on in the case, when something cracks, it cracks from like the bottom up. So when they're looking at it, just because you don't see cracks on the top doesn't mean that it's not, the next straw is going to break the camel's back. It's going to break the next day. So anyway, Altec, they sent it home to these people. They put on the repair slip, good, found no cracks. Okay? The owner of it thought that they had fixed it. Okay. Then fast forward to 2006. Altec, even though they had made some of these fixes in 2001, they were still having major problems. And I'll give you an example that we found out through this litigation. Bell South, as an example, they had an incident in 2005 where a man was up in the bucket, it tipped, broke, he fell out.
What happened to him, by the way?
He was injured. He injured his neck. He injured his back. He wasn't a paraplegic, but there was this case. Yeah. It was in Louisiana. So anyway, Bell South had 174 of these AP45s. Yeah. When that happened, Bell South demanded you replace all of these. Right. And what they found when Altec replaced all of them, 50% were defective, 50% had cracks, 50% was a catastrophe waiting to happen. The problem was then they sent out this notice in 2006, and all Altec did, knowing that this machine could injure or kill you, they sent a certified letter. At that point, there were 140 people that owned these. And so they sent one to our client. They actually had a son at home that had a brain tumor the parents of the company were gone. He signed this certified letter.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened to it, but they never received it.
Mm.
So they never took it in. And the problem was this, and to me, the biggest problem in the case is that if you manufacture a product that you know can either kill or injure you, you can't just get off the hook by sending a letter and not doing follow-up.
What do you have to do?
What you have?
The question is not what should you do, but what legally do you have to do?
Well, what legal you have to do is you have to follow up. And in this particular case, Altec had the address where these people live.
Yeah.
They had the phone number of the owner. They had the phone number of the foreman.
Yeah.
They have only 2 authorized dealers in California. They knew that they had not brought the AP45 back in. So they needed to do a follow-up. We found out through discovery that of the 144 owners, 18 of them never signed a certified letter. They never did. And Altec never, to this day, they've never had a program to follow up with these owners.
When you talk about follow-up, there is another part of Altec, the manufacturer, which they did a lot of follow-up, and that is marketing new products, right?
Yes.
Selling new products.
Yes.
In other words, they would send a notice about, hey, we've got some product that is new, and when people didn't respond, they sent them another one, wouldn't they?
Exactly.
Because they wanted to make money.
Exactly.
But on the existing product, they didn't follow up on it, even though it could be fatal.
Exactly. And in our case, they had the email address of the owner.
They never emailed them.
They did email them to sell their products.
Oh, but not to notify them of the defective product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they had the emails to make money, but when it came to safety, they didn't tell them bring it in. Precisely.
So how did this case progress? You do this discovery, as a lot of law firms do. You discover these facts. What happens then?
We discovered the facts that they treated their big customers very different than their little guy.
Meaning they fixed the problem.
Yeah.
Little guys they didn't care about.
Yeah. The big guys like Bell South or other big companies, AT&T, that had purchased 30 or 40, they brought them all in and they changed them all. But the little guys, they never did the follow-up. And what we found to this day, there are 134 out of these 700 that have never been repaired.
Right. They're out there, they're going to cause problems.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Altec to this day does not have a program to follow up to find these people.
Well, let me ask you something. Could that be considered almost criminal? I mean, they're aware of what might happen if a product is in service, but their defense is we tried.
Right. They
didn't try enough.
Exactly. And it's not enough. It's like a lot of, the public, we sometimes get recall notices, and there might be a fan belt problem or your windshield wiper, something like that.
Right.
But here, the difference with Altec, and even you look at car manufacturers, sometimes it might be 3 million cars. Yeah. Here, there was only 700, right? And then again, they should have followed up. They have all of this information, and they didn't. So I think, again, my side, I do, the civil side, so, we can sue for punitive damages, but clearly their conduct is it's gross conduct. Right. It's,
What eventually happened in this case?
What ultimately happened is we were able to resolve this case.
You settled the case?
We settled the case.
Before you went to trial?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the reason you did that is because you present at a settlement conference, you present all this evidence, right?
Right, yes. We had a mediation, and we presented the evidence about, what they knew, when they knew it, what they should have done, what they didn't do.
Right.
And, but again, from our standpoint, if it would go to a jury, as an example, in this case, Altec did send a certified letter to this family.
Yes.
The family signed the certified letter.
Yes.
And so their defense was, we notified them, we wash our hands. Yeah. Okay. We said, no, if you make a dangerous product, you know it's dangerous, you know it can injure or kill somebody, you have an obligation, a duty to notify them.
Especially when you could prove that they continued to notify them to sell other products.
Precisely.
Right, to make more money.
Yes, right. If they could find them for money, they could find them for safety.
Yeah. Russ, what do you failed? I'm in a world of hurt. What's your analysis? What's your investigation? What do you do?
Well, what I tell the client initially that comes in is because I've been doing product liability litigation for over 35 years. I started, I had a Jeep CJ rollover case, was like my second trial. And at the time, I got the largest award ever against American Motors Corporation. And it was a death of a young girl. And even it was in our small county here, which is a very conservative county, but the jury awarded $3.8 million in punitive damages.
Because they knew there was a defective product and they didn't do anything about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they promoted
What was the
it.
defective product? Because I used to have one of those.
It would roll over very easily. And so the Jeep CJ, as an example, was a military vehicle. Right. And there it had manual steering and it could only go, 30, 40 miles an hour. Well, what American Motors and Jeep Corporation, what they did was they advertised them to the most inexperienced drivers, the 18 to 34-year-old. They raised what's called the center of gravity. And the track width was very narrow. They put power steering in. They put racing stripes on. They called it a Renegade, right? This appeal. And so what it would happen is on paved road, a Jeep CJ could turn over at 20, 25 miles an hour. If you drop the wheels off the lip of a road, it could roll over. But at the end of the day, what I was very proud of is that a group of attorneys, through these cases, we got them to change the Jeep CJ, and we got them to widen the track width and lower the center of gravity. They stopped making the CJ5 and the CJ7. And as of 1988, the new Jeeps are totally different and they're safe.
Right. Well, if you bring in the Altec 45, AP45, are they required to fix it for free?
Yes.
Okay. But they are, at this present time, they are not in search of those 100 or whatever it is that have not been brought in, right?
Correct.
I've always wanted to ask this question. Okay, you have a manufacturer, Altec, the manufacturer product. Okay, sometimes these vehicles get sold to resellers, and those resellers are selling used construction equipment and they sell it to another customer. Is that reseller responsible to the reseller, to their customer if there's some situation where they're injured, or is it all jump back to the manufacturer?
In most situations, it goes back to the manufacturer because a lot of the resellers, they do not know because it's a hidden defect. They don't know. This particular machine is, it has a serial number, but also it's a licensed vehicle that goes down the road. So what's important about that is, and you are correct, a lot of these have been resold, like Bell South. They would have it for 5 years. They would sell it. But there is a way to find these people, and they should do that. They should have a follow-up program.
You have a lot of people contact you regarding cases. You're well known in this area. You've been very successful at getting people justice and, monetary verdicts and settlements that they need. When someone walks into your office and they have a potential case, let's take like Lance. You mentioned that obviously you look at the type of case, whether it's the facts are provable, but also what figures in there is the individual, correct?
Correct.
How did your firm find out about Lance, and what was your initial impression when you met him?
Well, Lance, had heard about myself and my firm, so he came in to see me. I interviewed him. From the beginning, I knew that, he was an honest guy. You can just get that feel. And so then what I tell the client, what I told Lance, is that I'll do an investigation. And the way that the vast majority of the people that I represent, they have little or no money. And so, we do it on what's called a contingency. And I tell every one of my clients that if I take your case, any of the costs like experts or whatever, I will pay all of those costs, and I'll find out if you have a case. And if at the end of the day you don't owe me a penny for any of my costs or any of my time. So that's what I told Lance. And in these cases, just like Lance's case, the costs were over $300,000 to prove, the case. But you have to have, the best experts when you go after a big manufacturer.
What impressed you the most about Lance?
He doesn't complain. He never gives up. Lance works out, he's a paraplegic. He works out 6 to 7 days a week, 4 to 6 hours a day. He has this drive to never give up. And it's unbelievable. And Lance, when I talk to him in person or when I call him on the phone, the first thing Lance will do is he'll say, "Russ, how are you doing?"
Right.
Or he'll say, "How's your family?"
Yeah.
Or, I'll call him because I'll be working on his case on a weekend or a Sunday. Yeah. And he'll just say, you don't need to do that. Or I'll have one of my grandkids that'll run up while he's on the phone and he'll say, well, just, I'll talk to you later. You just, be with your grandson. Yeah. He's just that way. He's a very giving, warm person.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show. And I'm sure everybody, especially in Lance's family, thank you for doing your due diligence and getting him, some semblance of justice. And that's what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.